if you are playing in the Eternal Weekend event at early December in Prague this year, and if you are playing Legacy on that weekend, look no more, because in this episode 86, our secret weapons to Eternal Weekend, we will guide you through our process of preparation and testing phases for this amazing event. This is In Response,
a Legacy podcast.
I'm Philipp Klein.
I am Daniel.
And I'm Peter Plank.
And we're talking about Legacy.
Most of the time.
You are listening to In Response, a Legacy podcast. A show where three handsome guys talk about their favorite Magic the Gathering format, Legacy.
I'm Peter Plank, the artificer. I've got everything at hand in my Goblin Welders toolbox.
I'm Daniel, the scientist. I ponder precisely about the next move that decides the fate of my opponents.
I'm Philipp Klein, the rogue. I use the graveyard to fuel opponents with agony.
And now, lean back and enjoy.
Guys, I'm very excited.
Me too.
Because it is roughly, well, at the date of this record, it is about 1 month, but the Eternal Weekend in Prague is coming up. And for that, I want to know how is your vibes when you're looking forward for this event, probably. How you're feeling for this event overall?
I mean, it's insane. It's the first time Eternal Weekend for me. I mean, you two guys were there last year, so I'm not prepared for the hype. It's just over the top. And also, I really love the fact that we are traveling as group together to Eternal Weekend Prague, so you can meet us there. So if you want to have a chat, just join us at Eternal Weekend. Would be great to see you. Exactly.
Peter, what about your feelings for that?
Yeah, I feel like I have unfinished work left there.
Yeah?
I did pretty great in the early 8 rounds of Eternal Weekend last year, and time to do well in the last 2 for this year, I would say.
I have the same feeling, and I think most of our listeners also feel the same, and that's the reason why we are making this episode right now. We want to give you a little bit of an insight on how we prepare for Eternal Weekend and tie this up with our deck choices, our secret weapons, and guide you through our process, how we got to where we are at this time and how we are feeling for the decks. And I think we can go round by round of each of our hosts. And I want to maybe start with Philipp here.
Oh, with me? Okay, yes. Perfect. I'm always glad to talk about myself.
Exactly. So, Philipp, obviously, you have been testing recently or playing in Legacy exclusively, I want to say, one deck, which is Oops All Spells.
Oh, yeah. I love, as everybody probably know of our listeners, I'm a real graveyard aficionado. Whether it's Hogak, whether it's Dredge, Arclight Phoenix decks. Everything that utilizes the graveyard is just chef's kiss for me.
So is this the reason why you chose the deck in the first place?
Probably, yeah. In the first place, it was like, I wanna play something that's fun for me. Mm-hmm. So I simply can't go to an event and play the best deck. Because if I don't enjoy myself doing this, if I don't enjoy myself playing through the tournament, I'm getting sloppy, I make bad decisions, I am not a good player then. And that doesn't mean that I'm a good player, but it gets even worse if I'm not really having fun. And therefore, it was like, what should I play for Eternal Weekend? And it's a really hard decision for me, because the decks that I love, the decks that I like to play, are pretty much outclassed at this point. It's not like you can play Dredge really competitively anymore. I mean, Mafuz van Gogh is trying it, and to a little bit of success, but basically he's also the only one who can really pilot this deck at the moment through our metagame. And Hogak is pretty much non-existent.
That is true.
The only real graveyard deck is blue-black Reanimator. Even red-black Reanimator doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, and the style of deck was never really mine. Also, red-black Reanimator was simply too straight-lined. Really too focused on one thing. Maybe it's a lot simply better than a lot of the decks I've mentioned. But I think if I want to be good at something, I have to have a good time doing it well. So my pick fell to Oops All Spells. Oops All Spells is a deck, it's probably at the moment the best graveyard deck right now in the format.
Except maybe for Reanimator.
Yeah, the best dedicated graveyard deck in the format. Or the graveyard combo deck. And therefore it was a pretty easy choice for me. And oftentimes I have the problem that I change decks too often before a big tournament, and then I go poorly because I think, well, yeah, that's the meta breaker and that's big brain energy right there, but it simply isn't. Because if you don't have the reps for a deck, that shows incredibly through your rounds.
Yeah, so proper playtesting before you head into a tournament is for sure one of the key factors. I think for the listeners, maybe, because Oops All Spells is not particularly the first deck that comes to mind when you talk about Legacy.
Yeah, that's true.
It is historically very, has its roots, definitely. Just out of, in a nutshell, what is Oops All Spells doing?
It's basically you're just trying to get to 4 mana or 5 mana and resolve either a Balustrade Spy or an Undercity Informer. And you can Balustrade Spy when it enters, and Undercity Informer when you sacrifice a creature. Lets you target a player and demill their deck until they find a land card, and basically mill the deck up until that point. Oops All Spells, like its name suggests, is a deck that doesn't play any lands, so you always mill your whole deck, and therefore use your graveyard as a resource, as your hand, play out of your graveyard, and then simply dread return or try to win with a Thassa's Oracle. Basically, I think Thassa's Oracle is known for everybody. Even Commander players win with Thassa's Oracle, so...
Thassa is not very much known, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, and that's basically plan A, and then you have plan B with Beatdown, with Memory's Journey. Or that's also what I really like about this deck. It has so many intricate lines, almost like Storm or like Doomsday, that you can try to circumvent pretty much all the hate that's available in the format. And most of the time you don't lose to 1 or 2 hate pieces. Your opponent has to have 2, 3, 4 hate pieces to stop you. And that's actually very resilient and very great for a deck, especially for a graveyard deck at the moment.
True. And would you say, because the number one enemy for graveyard deck at the moment is Reanimator, and people have been packing, if you look at Legacy, there are different forms of graveyard hates that you can pack, and people are very much focusing on these days on single target removal, like Fairy Macabre, where like Ghost Vacuum is now the newest edition probably, a surgical maybe, but that's about it. There's not really, Leylands I guess are really on the low side at the moment. For example, would you say that this is a reason why you chose the deck?
The resilience for sure is the reason why I chose the deck, or is part of the reason why I chose the deck. But yeah, the evolution of the metagame is really in favor of Oops. You have to have, like you said, single targeted graveyard removal just for beating blue-black Reanimator. And if you go 3 Ghost Vacuum and a surgical, or 3 Ghost Vacuum and a Nihil Spellbound, you lose to Oops All Spells. It's, you have to have Force Consign and a Ghost Vacuum to simply stand a chance, because the single target graveyard removal is easily, very, very, very easily beatable with Oops.
So what is the kind of interaction you are fearing the most?
The kind of interaction I fear the most is for sure Grafdigger's Cage.
Okay.
Grafdigger's Cage is simply the best hate card against this deck. You can't win through your graveyard anymore. And Grafdigger's Cage is always on the low end of sideboard cards, because most of the time the decks can't play them themselves because they reanimate something or want to play something out of the graveyard, and therefore it's like they can't really play Grafdigger's Cage themselves. So you don't actually gear against it. You don't aim for it. The only real plan that you have is beatdown. It's like, your turn one Grafdigger's Cage resolves, you're on the play. It's like, time to get Dark Ritual into Poxwalker.
Is it really that bad? Because on Modo I played against Oops already, and there was a list with I think 4 of the fish bounce spell, for example.
They sink into Stupor, or you mean into the Flatmaw?
Into the Flatmaw. So you have some outs against it, regarding of the version.
It depends on the variant that you're playing. You have some outs. You have 4 sink into Stupor in the main deck. You have Echoing Truth into the Flatmaw, maybe Chains of Vapor in the sideboard. So there are ways to beat it. But yeah, it's like I said, you don't gear against it. It's like against Delver, you don't board into the Flatmaw. Against a single Grafdigger's Cage, you don't board Echoing Truth. You don't board these kind of things because you don't want to dilute your game plan too much. It's a lot better to simply put in more discard, play Duress, or play more Thassa's Oracle in the blue-black version, to simply gear against Grafdigger's Cage. It's a lot better.
Okay. Given now that we have a little bit of an idea what the deck is doing and what it's weak and in terms of graveyard hate, it's one important factor. You said it can dodge a lot of interaction at the moment because a lot of the spotlight is on blue-black Reanimator in this format at the moment. Like the top decks, I would say let's say the 5 top decks would be a blue-black Reanimator, Stompy, like Moon Stompy and Eldrazi Stompy, for example. Then blue-black Tempo would be another version, and something like Painter. What would you say, if you look at these matchups, is your deck faring against those?
I think against blue-black Reanimator, it's pretty much a die roll. If they're going first, they probably go in end of turn and Tomb Reanimator Atraxa. You can win these kind of games if they don't find interaction in the 10 cards. But it's very, very rare. Most often you win on your turn 1 simply against them. You go Thoughtseize, discard their interaction, then go off. Or they try to force you and you pact and it's over. And they don't really have sideboard hate. I think they're, like we said, they play the Ghost Icon, maybe 1 or 2 Fairy Macabre, which is also beatable. And I think that's a pretty coin toss. For Moon Stompy, it's really mulligan dependent.
Okay.
Because if they, and it depends on their kind of graveyard hate. If they go Leyline into Vexing Bauble, things get pretty rough.
That's probably one of the only decks that have Leyline still.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Not often, not on the times, but yeah.
Yeah, so Leyline into Vexing Bauble is pretty rough. Simple Leyline is pretty easy beatable. Simple Vexing Bauble is also beatable. Pretty great, actually. But these in combination are really hard. But yeah, it's like they are a non-blue deck. They don't have to, they can't dig for the pieces. They have to have them in the opener.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it's also pretty winnable in my opinion. Eldrazi is a little bit harder because they have the Fairy Macabres, they play Mind Break Traps, which are also pretty good against us. And also Kozilek's Command.
Yeah.
Kozilek's Command is maybe one of the best main deck cards against Oops.
Yeah, if they have a lot of mana, can exile a lot of cards.
Yeah,
At instant
it's
speed,
more like simply let your faster resolve, and then you draw one card.
I see.
That's basically the thing. Yeah.
That's shit.
Therefore, it's kind of hard always to sideboard out the effects against this deck. You need some kind of protection.
But you gotta play around with this kind of. You gotta notice things so that you don't get blown up, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
For
sure. It always pays off simply to put in the reps and to get to know your deck and to know your opponent's deck, because knowing your opponent's deck is pretty much half of the work.
Yeah, exactly. Is this something that you think is most important thing for testing, or in general? How did you go for, I gotta pick a deck for Eternal Weekend, and now I'm at all spells. I have my matchups kind of prepared. What was the process from going from A to B kind of thing? How did you play test in the end?
Yeah, I mean, for me it was the easiest choice to simply go on Modo to buy the deck and to get some leagues going, because you can play so many leagues, against so many different decks. You can always switch things up and try new cards or try new configurations. And for me, it's simply the best way to really gear for a big event.
Okay. And speaking of your variants of different cards, did you consider different versions of the deck, or you're completely settled on your 75 at this point?
No. My 75 are still in flux. I think the variant that I'll be playing will be the blue-black variant, because I really like playing Force of Wills, blue and Stifles, and having access to more lands, and also don't be that really hard all in that the green-black version is doing. But there are still so many things that have to be tried, because at the moment they're trying 2 to 3 Poxwalkers in the main deck. I actually want to try to switch up the mana base a little bit, go a little bit deeper into black, because I think still black mana is the biggest bottleneck of the deck. And incorporating another black land is probably the right way to do, the right way to go. And there are also traps in this deck, like Once Upon a Time or Goblin Charbelcher.
This is something that is a good point, because there was a winning deck list right
I
now
know.
from Ansit's Legacy Showcase, I think, and the first place actually was All Spells, that had a transformational sideboard plan into Goblin Charbelcher.
Yeah.
So I think it's a trap.
It's pretty much proven at this point, because the All Spells Discord has a history of logging in the matchup data, and it's pretty much proven that Lades and Charbelchers in the sideboard don't increase your win rate. It's actually reverse. So it's not a great sideboard plan. I mean, it can pay off like it did for this iteration. Maybe because people were gearing more Graveyard Hate, or simply they drew really great. Because Charbelcher often loses to forces, to simply counter magic. So I'm unsure if Charbelcher really is the way to go for Oops. I mean, there were some things that I like about this list, like the one of Lothlet Giant in the sideboard. It's a 7 mana, I don't know, 5/5, 3/3. No idea. 6/4. Okay, I don't have any idea. I only know the effect, and the effect is, if it comes into play, it deals damage equal to the creature cards in your graveyard to the opponent.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
As a second red return target if your Fathers get Fairy Macabre. And I also really like the second red return in the sideboard for beating Fairy Macabre in the same turn. Which is also something that I'm considering at the moment to try it out.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I think there are some weeks to go for this. Well, at this point we have roughly 1 month. So, but it seems like you have a pretty well put together plan. So overall, we can say playtest is, in that case, very important.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And at least settle for a shell and then tweak with the flex slot in that case.
In my opinion, that's the best way to go.
Exactly. Another best way to go would be to follow us on Patreon.
Do it. Oh, yeah.
We have 3 lovely patrons that support our show, which are Christian Neutz, Matt Dunking, and Moritz Eichmeier. You can also support us by going onto our webpage, patreon.com/response_legacy, and look up our tiers, our benefits. You get your hands on some nice in-response stickers or some nice in-response cups. If you want to, head over there. We would certainly appreciate your input and your
Support.
Support. Thanks.
your support. And I think thanks definitely, Philipp, for this nice overview for Oops, which is your deck choice for Eternal Weekend. Peter,
Yeah.
you also have pretty much, I think for yourself, you were not as settled from the beginning on your deck as Philipp was, but you kind of chose now in the last couple of weeks your weapon of choice, which is Mono Red Stompy. How do you feel about this deck, or how or why did you actually choose now Mono Red Stompy?
Yeah, it's the thing. I'm usually the Urza Saga player, and like Mono Red Stompy is quite the oppose. So I'm more like the painter. In the last few months, I played a lot of Green-White depths, and both of those decks don't really feel that great positioned. Even though the data for painter was really good, but the versions that I play or that I want to play don't really perform that well in the meta currently. So I don't feel comfortable on it. And we tried a few decks around. And then I got handed from a friend Mono Red Stompy, and he said, play the deck. It's really, really great. And then I immediately lost a few games with it. But I saw that the deck can do some important or some great things. And yeah, I picked it also up on Modo and played it there. And yeah, the deck can do some really powerful stuff.
It is explosive, absolutely. It is one of the decks that can really lock out a player. I think exclusive with this deck is able to do that compared to other versions or other decks in Legacy. So you think because you don't, well, you can focus on your mulligan decision, which is I guess a skill or a strength that you already bring with Painter, that you can also apply for this deck, and then you are limiting your choices in your options in the decision process, and how then to navigate for any given match of Legacy in that point. So do you value in that sense? It is often said that Mono Red Stompy is kind of an easier deck, or let's say for the mind an easier deck for tournament. Do you value that if you look at the 7, 8, 9 round tournament?
For sure, it's definitely an advantage that the decision process is very, very focused at a single point, and which is, as I said, keep a mulligan decision. And a reason for the deck that I think it should be a good fit for me actually is like since I think 2021, so now like exclusively for 3 years, I'm playing without any brainstorm ponders, no blue decks. So I feel like I'm really good, or like one of my key strengths usually is keep a mulligan decision.
One of your key strengths usually is not playing blue, not sucking at brainstorm.
No,
avoiding blue.
Avoiding blue, yeah.
No, it's like having the strengths in the keep a mulligan decision. Also, like sideboarding with blue decks or non-blue decks is like vastly different. And the thing with Painter, where they developed the sideboard over the last 2 years, it sucks because like usually I'm the guy that has like 4 or 5 different slots for the sideboard, which is mostly a combination of 2, sometimes 3 or 4 cards that I bring in, and I have the same number of cards that are bad in a matchup to bring out. So the sideboarding decision is pretty easy. And this is the same with Mono Red Stompy currently. So this is also something that frees up your mind. You are way quicker. You can sideboard within a minute. You hand the deck to your opponent. You can take a sip from your drink. So I think this is for a tournament process very, very good.
So, do you have your side bomb plan mapped out and your slots for that already? If you say, it sounds like you have it. Yeah, it's very easy. I do this and matchup, and it might be the case because I guess for mono red the slots are so kind of determinable. What kind of cards is doing what in what matchup?
Yeah. To some extent, I feel I know what I'm doing because I'm currently playing the Eternal Weekend winning list.
Okay, which is what? What is the sideboard?
The sideboard is like 4 leyline.
Okay, yeah.
You have
Bad news for
you have the 2 dead guns in the board. What are some other cards in the board?
Is it an extra fury or something maybe? Or is
No,
it
you're
fury?
playing the full playset of Fury in the main deck. I'm complete.
Some artifact removal in the sideboard, as far as I know.
Yeah, you're playing like 2 of the burn up to 6 damage to your opponent. The sweeper effects,
The
Fury Confluence.
Fairy
Confluence, and a few other cards. But they mostly share like a thing. Because like the burn to your opponent's face or the sweep up to the board is like pretty good.
I guess some blasts, right?
You're playing 4 blasts in the board, yeah. Usually those are in the main deck, but yeah, it's different here. But yeah, it feels like I know to some extent what to board because all the cards are pretty like, you know what those are for.
Yeah.
And so you bring them just in. And you have in the main deck, for example, like the Playset of Blood Moon. Sometimes those cards are not really that great.
Yeah.
The Vexing Bauble, the Furies. Sometimes Laelia seems off because you can't really connect to your opponent. Faber is sometimes just too slow. Those are just cards that you can bring out of the deck, and you bring in your more excited cards.
Okay. How do you see then with this weapon? How do you see the top decks as a matchup perspective? Do you think you have a solid plan against same idea, let's say other Stompy versions like Eldrazi? It might be an interesting matchup to talk about. Or Blue-Black Reanimator. Maybe let's start with that. How do you think about this matchup?
Blue-Black Reanimator currently is like the thing that I kind of worry the most because it has a few different angles that you have to kind of control. So I really want to try a version with like the places of Ghost Vacuum in the main deck for Mono Red Stompy. But the thing with Mono Red Stompy is like, if you have the dream day, the perfect day, no deck can beat your best draws. That's the thing with the deck.
Yeah, that's true.
You have so really powerful draws because like, for example, against Blue-Black Reanimator, Blue-Black Tempo, they can't beat a turn 1 4 mana with Vexing Bauble into Blood Moon.
Yeah.
This is, in usual cases, game over.
In general, I guess one of the best starts that this deck has, right? Yeah.
And for example, if you have some of those starts, you already won the game 1. And sometimes you don't have the perfect start, or most of the time you don't have the perfect start. But the key decision is here to focus, keep a mulligan, make good decisions on the pre-game, and then let the top of the deck decide how your fate will end. Keep your mental high. Don't get frustrated with your draws, because mental is the key thing, especially with every decision you make within a tournament.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Because how afraid are you of losing to your own deck?
good question. Huh?
It happens.
So you kind of shrug it off and everything's fine.
It's like I've played my fair share of non-blue decks.
Yeah.
Sometimes you draw like shit for a few turns. With Painter you have a lot of variables that you can do that I'm now missing with Mono Red Stompy. But yeah, even though you have additional lands like the modular double-faced cards, one of them is basically a ghost quarter. So a key plan, especially against Blue-Black Tempo, for example, is like lock them under Blood Moon and then kill one of their basics. If you kill the island, every out is basically gone
it's
because
game
they
over.
don't have the Brazen Borer anymore.
Usually I would, yeah, Brazen Borer can be affected, but on that I would suggest to focus on the swamp.
Because days.
Days is not right. I mean,
You can bounce it.
to destroy the swamp. I mean, because all the removal and the threats are black based, which is kind of the problem sometimes, or at least how I won from the blue-black perspective against Mono Red. But yeah, very, very. I think overall very good plan that you bring for this kind of for this matchup. You spoke about the deck choices in particular, or let's say card choices. Do you have some open slots, some fluctuation of your 75? Would you say, I don't know, everything is kind of settled? Or do you crunch the numbers still?
I will for sure crunch the numbers. I will change like a few of those because like Laelia of the one hand is like the card that gives you additional card advantage. Sometimes she just feels dead a little bit because like if your opponent has like a psychic frog out, you can't attack into it. If your opponent has a necrogoyf out, you can't attack into it. So Laelia is like a card that I wasn't excited even at first when I picked up the deck, because like a lot of times you have multiples of those in hand and the second one doesn't feel great. It does not go too well with Fable of the Mirror Breaker, for example. So it's kind of a little bit off, but I think you want a few of those. So I think for at least the fourth Laelia will get cut for Magus of the Moon currently.
Okay.
But I really want to see Ghost Vacuum. I have to clean up the deck because like currently it feels like really good from the main deck with the slots besides the fourth Laelia. So I have to feel, do I don't want the Furies in the main deck? So it's like a little bit of a decision where I have to move the parts. But Ghost Vacuum feels like a really solid choice currently in the meta.
Main deck Ghost Vacuum?
For main deck Ghost
For
Vacuum.
main deck Ghost
Oh, really?
Vacuum,
And what about Vexing Bubbles?
I play full playset of those.
So-
you don't play any Chalice of the Void.
I know, but I'm wondering about the slots. So what is then, because I know the version where you have 4 Laelia for
The One Ring.
and for Fury, for Paragoyf.
This is the version that I'm currently playing.
Okay, and this has 4 Ghost Vacuum?
No, though I have to try other versions that are playing the 4 Ghost
Okay,
Vacuum
so
in the main.
what would be the cut then for this?
I'm unsure.
Okay.
I only know that there are lists out there
Yeah.
with those, and they're apparently running quite good. But I have to try them out to see how they play actually.
Will you then also keep the Leylands in the board? I think that's a reasonable question here. Because going overboard with Leyland-like effects or with Graveyard Hate in general seems like a bad decision to have so many dead cards.
Yeah.
No, it will free up some slots in the sideboard for
Probably,
sure.
yeah.
Because I think you move down to 2 sideboard graveyard cards.
Like for Macabre. Two Macabre.
Like two
Macabres.
Macabre or 2 Unlicensed Hearths or something.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Seems like a good plan.
Most likely it should be like Macabre, not hers, because it's also an artifact. Can be enacted with bounce spells for blue-black Reanimator to free up, like end of turn, bounce it, entomb afterwards, and then reanimate. So you have still the Macabre that you can intact with it maybe.
So you overall feel pretty confident with the deck. It's just more on the practice side of things.
Yeah,
And tweaking the numbers.
yeah,
So
definitely
that you can settle on
trying
it and have hopefully a good run for the Eternal Weekend.
Definitely switching the night before to Painter. I know it.
as we know you.
Yes, I'm looking forward to this. On the way to Eternal Weekend, I'm gonna play Painter.
It's like, oh wow, have you seen this new Painter list? Oh my gosh, he plays that card. Oh my god, it's so great.
10-0 main event.
No, but I like it. I like your deck choices, both of your deck choices. I think those suit your styles very well overall, and I think they give the best chance at the moment for winning which is the goal.
For sure.
Obviously, win the Eternal Weekend.
Top 32 is the goal.
Not going 0-3 drop. that's the dream.
That's the goal, yeah. I'm
Daniel?
last but not least, yes, I want to also...
It's on you now, Daniel.
It's on me, yeah. I will also, give you a little bit of an idea of what I'm playing. I spoiled it when we talked about Mono Red. I'm playing blue-black tempo. That is pretty much settled for me. Because I have the most iterations with the deck, I have the most success with it. Recently, also, at a local game store. I'm probably the one from us that don't play Mono with that. With the deck, you guys have the deck online. I have to rely on paper testing for this. But we made some sessions with our play group, and we have our weekly Legacy FNM of our Austrian Legacy League, obviously. The deck overall seems like absolutely my style of play, because as this is maybe opposite to you, Peter, what you said, I can't stand it when I am not,
when you're losing against your own deck?
When I cannot manipulate my draws, when I don't have consistency, I really hate this. I don't want to draw, I don't know, my Chrome boxes after
Narcomoebas.
My Narcomoebas, this is an open wound.
Because Daniel was playing Breakfast for a long time, and drawing Narcomoebas is really shitty in Oops, and it's even more shitty in Breakfast.
It's so funny because the recent testing session that we had, I played against Breakfast, one really strong player of our community, and it really, I really got a little bit of taste. Maybe I should try it, but I'm at this point saying no. I don't
Not
switch
for
it
Eternal
up.
Weekend.
Yeah.
You don't switch.
Yeah.
I think switching at this moment is probably the worst thing that you can do, because
Probably.
you don't get in the reps.
Yeah.
You get into cul-de-sac probably, and then it's pretty much over. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. For that reason, I really want to stay on blue-black tempo. The whole idea is, of course, very simple. So you have just beat down cheap creatures and the most efficient interaction pieces, and it is good stuff, or let's say no bad cards.
No bad cards tempo.
Yeah, tempo kind of thing.
I think I heard this term some years ago.
Yeah.
But have you settled already on a version? Because currently they're running versions around with Necrogoyf, some with Tamios, some
true.
with Delve Secrets.
Yeah.
So are you on Wasteland? Are you not on Wasteland?
And for me, to really interrupt you, for me the biggest question is, before we go into this, why don't you play Reanimator instead, blue-black?
That's a good question, actually, yeah. I will come back to this. But to answer that beforehand, right before we get into the details, probably when you want to rely on the power level of your deck, there is another reason. I think that overall, maybe on average, the blue-black Reanimator is stronger.
Yeah.
Like in a vacuum. But what I like, there are two things. First of all, the consistency, what I mentioned before, because you have you have the same level of power that you draw throughout the matches and the games. You can rely on that. This is what I enjoy overall. And for blue-black Reanimator, what I feel is that it has a lot of spotlight in the metagame, and therefore it has really a lot of targeted hate. You are kind of really the
little brother.
Yeah, probably.
I'm the little brother, but this is really the public enemy of number one, basically. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to beat blue-black Reanimator, and this tempo deck, even though it also relies on the graveyards, it doesn't get like completely hated out if people want to, through multiple ghost vacuums. If guys are playing 4-offs in the main deck, for example, I can play very well around that. That is fine. And for that reason, I enjoy this deck a little bit more, even though maybe it's probably a little bit lower on the power level. Mm-hmm. But that's the reason for me.
So now to your question, Peter. I'm so sorry.
On the variants, you said, because there are some different versions, and I think overall there are, like just right now, recently there was this showcase from Ansit where Eco Baronen went top 8 with a version that included Delver.
Yeah.
I think overall it is, if you really target a specific metagame and you pick your matchups that you want to lose to and you want to win against and to want to really target certain matchups, you can opt for Delver if you want to beat Combo, if you want to beat Stompy, probably. This version would be the fastest because, it is, besides Nethergorth, it has Delver Secrets, which is basically the best options for one-drops to be as aggressive as possible. I, however, think that I enjoy the ability to grind a little bit or to switch to a grinding plan when my opponents are typically stronger. And I expect that in a paper legacy tournament, people usually pick a little bit more grindier decks on average, I would say. And I want to have my ability to also generate card advantage. And I think this Delver version is really full on aggression, which also is not fully my style. I want to have a little bit of card advantage. I hope this gives me an edge against certain matchups. Like, I don't know, for example, the blue-black Reanimator, actually. I think in the mirror, I think if you want to have a little bit of more card advantage, it can be can be going for you. Then the second version is now what is up to discussion is whether you want Nethergorth or not. And I recently there's a lot of lists that doesn't play them, the Nethergorths, and I kind of don't understand why, unless I understood why. Like online, if you have the recent trends, I mean, there is this nice post, we talked about it before the podcast, from Bob Huang, who made like the metagame shifts in percentages over the couple of weeks now.
Yeah,
and if you've seen the Stompy decks combined, they really shift downwards in percentages over the couple of weeks. And if you have this metagame online, it makes sense that you drop Nethergorth because you want to have more grind elements against all the other decks, probably. Bound Nadu is, for example, a great example. This deck is really tough to beat, actually, for blue-black tempo in general. But if you drop Nethergorths, which is an easy target for swords, then you have more elements that you can grind out because you have Temio and Orcish Bowmasters. And Wasteland, for example, is always a 4-off. There is no version without Wasteland.
Yep. There are versions without
Really?
any wastelands because of
I've
mana
never seen-
consistency.
I've not
I'm
seen
not
any.
sure who did it, but
This
there
must
were
be
a
a
couple of
singleton.
5-0s.
This must be a singleton or one player maybe, because on average, I don't think there's blue-black.
It's quite a known player, and I think it's actually Echo Baronen that tried it like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it could be.
They
could be.
cleaned out the whole mana base.
Okay.
Both for blue-black Reanimator
Okay,
and blue-black Temple.
It is.
Yeah.
Of course, you can try it. I personally don't agree with that. I think it's more. I think it's actually one advantage that you have if you compare again blue-black Reanimator and blue-black Tempo, that you can have the 4 sets of 4 pieces of Wasteland. I think for blue-black Reanimator, they are currently hovering on 2 to 3 Wastelands, and I think 3 is even tad on the greedy side at this point, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think they should be, if they want to have consistency in the mana base, only 2 Wastelands, the blue-black Reanimator. But Tempo can really go for the 4 Wastelands, and I think they should also. I think this is a very important piece for Stompy, for Eldrazi, for even sometimes stuff like Band Nadu or something. Breakfast, you want to hit the Ursa Sagas and so on. I think it is really important piece of interaction for this deck. I don't personally like the version without Nethergorth. That's
So you have Tamio, Nethergorths, Psychic Frogs, a couple of Murktides, some
Bowmasters.
Bratzes.
and Bowmasters. Bowmasters is, I think, a weird thing at the time because people say it's gone, and people then therefore don't prepare for it,
And then it's good again.
And secretly, it's actually good, I think.
Yeah.
And I kind of like my Bowmasters.
Yeah.
I had very big success with Bowmasters recently.
It's a dredge paradox.
Yeah.
Dredge is good when
Yeah.
no one when dredge is bad.
Yeah.
Then no one prepares for dredge,
Yeah.
and then suddenly it's a good deck. Then everyone prepares for dredge, and it's bad again.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Bowmasters. The
Exactly.
better the Bowmaster is, the worse it is.
Yeah.
It's like a sine curve.
Exactly.
It's self-controlling, which means actually Bowmaster is
Fine.
fine and
Yeah.
good in the metagame.
Yeah. There even some
Oh god, you heard it. Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry to
Bowmaster's
all
fine.
elves players.
Sorry, Gino.
And you can even see that because there are some targeted matchups where I want my Orcish Bowmasters, which is, for example, Philipp Breakfast. Very good card against this deck. One big piece would be the One Ring deck, like Mystic Forge. I want to have my
Mono Red
Bowmasters. Red Stompy also has the One Ring, exactly. So there are versions where I really want, access to a Bowmaster. And suddenly, I don't know, I expect that Chesscase control. I don't expect too much for color beans. It's really not too much in the meta at the moment. But Chesscase control would be probably the best control deck at this point.
Yeah, right now.
I expect these decks, and Bowmasters is a good tool to beat down on those decks.
Fenris Cloud actually played a final of a small local today with Chesskai. I'm not sure if he won because it was still in process when we started recording.
Okay, but maybe we will know, of course, if this deck is good or not. No, but I'm tinkering around with my sideboard as well. One example is Dark Betrayal, for example. It is an instant that
Are
destroys
you on
black.
2?
A target creature.
No. I'm between 0 and 1.
Okay.
I don't want. It's for the mirror, obviously, and then it's very much for blue-black Reanimator. And I don't know if I want a dedicated card for that matchup. Probably it's a good idea.
What would be the switch?
There is the option to have a second Force of Negation, for example. Then there is an option to have a Toxic Deluge, which is good against Eldrazi and some random Band Nadu, maybe how's it called, Cradle Control or
Nado Elves.
Nado Elves or something like that would be an option. Or although I think this is otherwise pretty settled, a Null Rod, which is good against Mystic Forge. And I think I definitely want to have a Null Rod. Also because it's good against Stompy and Painter, for example. If I
Against Paint it's a sweet up.
Yeah.
Against Stompy it usually clears the board, which then you have to hope that you have some follow-up in the hand.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
I really like the Dark Betrayal.
It's a good card, yeah.
The one of Dark
Absolutely.
Betrayal I expect a lot of blue-black tempo. I expect a lot of Reanimator.
Yeah.
There are so many black creature cards that you simply can pop off.
Yes.
So one Dark Betrayal in the board is
Yeah.
for me would be kind of set.
Then I'm choosing my weapon of choice for Graveyard Hate at this point. I am on a surgical and
Free Nihil Spellbomb.
I'm a 2 main deck.
Okay.
There are versions also
three.
with 3 at the moment. Yes, exactly.
In the main.
In the main,
free main. Easy Money Marksman at the moment. Trophy.
That's good
I think
to
the
hear.
last free trophy runs were with free Nihil Spellbomb in the main.
That's the version without the Netherglyphs, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, that has typically also 3 Nihil Spellbomb, which is potent against blue-black and various other types of decks. I'm at 2, which is the standard. If you like the normal version of tempo, and I also have a Graph Digger's Cage in the sideboard because I feel specifically I want the edge against Band Nadu, which is a tough matchup. Breakfast also is good, and random stuff like Oops.
Yeah, Cradle Control.
Or Cradle Control. Yeah.
Or
Graph
Cradle
Digger's Cage
Control, yeah.
is great against Green Sun Zenith decks.
Yeah.
And Natural Order decks, yeah.
And I played since we played the last time, Oops can be tough. It can be really tough. And having this universal Graveyard Hate, I like the Graph Digger's Cage. As a one.
For sure. I think Even though I'm probably shooting myself in the knee here, if you're a tempo deck, you should play one Graph Digger's Cage in side. It's simply self-explanatory. You get so many percentage points against a vast majority of or vast array of decks that it's. I think it's free to run.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think we have brought you a lot of insight in this episode about our preparations for Eternal Weekend. And so it would be great if you follow us on YouTube. So click and subscribe and also follow us on our social medias. It's @response_legacy on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can find me on Twitter. It's @PhinikMTG, PHINIKMTG.
You can find me on Twitter. It's @FlyingDelvoder.
And you can find me on x.com. It's @UnicornLord, but the O in the Lord is a 0.
Thank you very much and see us hopefully at the Eternal Weekend. So hit us up and maybe we can chat a little bit. That'd be great.
So in response, see you there.
This was In Response, a Legacy podcast. If you enjoyed the ride, feel free to support the show by following, leaving a review, or subscribe on patreon.com/response_legacy.